As you read this sentence, dozens of cyber attacks are happening around the world. No tanks are advancing, no bombs are exploding, no sound is heard, but the damage can be devastating. Welcome to this deep dive into modern warfare and the invisible battle between Russian and American hackers. Before we begin, leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. We want to know how far these stories reach about the new battlefields that are redefining the concept of war in the 21st century. Imagine waking up on an ordinary morning to discover that all banking systems in your country have been paralyzed. ATMs don't work, online transfers are blocked, credit cards inoperative, or worse, hospitals without access to medical records, power plants offline, water supply systems compromised. No bombs, no territorial invasion, not a single drop of blood spilled. This is the face of modern warfare, silent, invisible, and potentially more disruptive than many conventional conflicts. War is no longer just about physical territory, soldiers in trenches, or aerial confrontations. Today, there exists a fourth domain of combat beyond land, sea, and air: cyberspace. A virtual realm where powerful nations wage daily battles, attacking and defending critical infrastructure, communication systems, government data, and even democratic processes. And at the center of this new reality are two historical powers, Russia and the United States. What makes this battle so fascinating and at the same time so frightening is its asymmetric nature. A single talented hacker working from an ordinary apartment can cause damage equivalent to military operations that would cost billions. Small, well-organized groups can destabilize entire nations. The line between state and non-state actors becomes increasingly thin, creating an environment of constant plausible deniability, where governments can attack without ever assuming responsibility. To understand the dimension of this invisible war, we first need to comprehend what cyber warfare actually is. In simple terms, we can define it as the use of the digital environment to conduct attacks that cause damage, disruption, or espionage against computerized systems, networks, and infrastructure of an adversary. It differs from common cybercrime because it has geopolitical, not financial motivation. And it differs from conventional warfare because it rarely involves direct physical damage, although it can, indirectly, cause real-world consequences. Cyber warfare isn't just about system infiltration. It encompasses a vast range of operations, from DDoS attacks that take down websites and services, malware that renders equipment useless, phishing that steals credentials, to sophisticated disinformation campaigns that manipulate public opinion. It's as if the traditional geopolitical chessboard has gained several new dimensions, where each move can be camouflaged, denied, or attributed to third parties. What makes Russia and the United States protagonists in this scenario? Both possess advanced cyber capabilities, a history of geopolitical confrontations, and a diplomatic relationship that has oscillated dramatically in recent decades. Russia, with its Soviet heritage of brilliant mathematicians and engineers, has developed one of the most sophisticated offensive cyber capabilities in the world. The U.S., birthplace of the internet and home to the planet's largest technology companies, invests billions in cybersecurity through agencies like the NSA and Cyber Command. This isn't a recent war. Its beginnings trace back to the end of the Soviet Union, when computerized systems were beginning to become critical for national infrastructures. But it was from the 2000s that cyberspace began to be recognized as a strategic military domain. And since 2014, with Russia's annexation of Crimea and subsequent deterioration of diplomatic relations, cyber operations between these powers have reached unprecedented levels. To understand the historical depth of this battle, we need to go back in time and examine how U.S.-Russia relations evolved since the end of the Cold War. On December 25, 1991, American President George H.W. Bush recognized the Russian Federation as the successor to the Soviet Union. 6 days later, the two countries established official diplomatic relations when Russian President Boris Yeltsin responded positively to the American proposal. The early 1990s were marked by relative cooperation. The United States supported Russia's economic transition to capitalism, providing technical and financial assistance. There was optimism that post-Soviet Russia could integrate into the US-led international system. However, this honeymoon period would be brief. NATO's bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999 represented the first major shock to this relationship. Russia, with its historical ties to the Serbs, saw the action as an affront to its regional influence and a unilateral use of force, without UN Security Council approval. This episode coincided with Vladimir Putin's rise to power in Russia, marking the beginning of a new era in bilateral relations. Under Putin's leadership, Russia adopted a more assertive foreign policy stance, seeking to restore its status as a great power. At the same time, the US under George W. Bush maintained a unilateral approach in its international actions. Russia's fierce opposition to the Iraq War in 2003 and its denunciations against NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe increased tensions. The Americans, in turn, criticized what they saw as authoritarian tendencies in Putin's government. The year 2007 marked a significant turning point. The US announced plans to build missile shields in Poland and radar systems in the Czech Republic, both former members of the Warsaw Pact. Although justified as defense against potential threats from Iran and North Korea, Russia interpreted the move as a direct threat to its security. In response, it tested a new intercontinental ballistic missile, specifically designed to neutralize the American system. The conflict in Georgia in 2008, when Georgian forces invaded South Ossetia with apparent American support, further deteriorated relations. Russia responded by sending a naval fleet to Venezuela, a Latin American nation historically critical of the US. In a clear geopolitical message, the election of Barack Obama in the US and Dmitry Medvedev in Russia in 2008 brought brief hopes for improvement. In 2009, a symbolic reset in relations was announced when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Minister Sergei Lavrov pressed a button representing a new beginning. However, this restart never materialized. Relations continued to deteriorate after protests in Russia in 2016, with the US accusing the Russian government of electoral fraud and Putin accusing Hillary Clinton of inciting the protests to provoke regime change. Russia's acceptance of Edward Snowden's asylum request in 2013, after the former CIA agent revealed US global surveillance programs, intensified tensions, leading Obama to cancel a planned meeting with Putin. But two specific events catapulted relations to their worst moment since the end of the Cold War: the Ukrainian crisis and the Syrian civil war. In 2014, after the overthrow of pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine by movements favoring closer ties with the European Union, Russia intervened militarily and annexed Crimea. Eastern Ukraine, especially Donetsk and Luhansk, became the stage for intense confrontations between pro-Russian forces and the Ukrainian government. The US and NATO accused Moscow of militarily supporting the separatists, something vehemently denied by the Kremlin. In Syria, the countries supported opposite sides in a war that became a stage for a proxy dispute. Since 2011, the US had supported sanctions against Bashar al-Assad's regime, while Russia maintained its historic relations with the Syrian government. In 2015, with the beginning of Russian military intervention in Syria supporting Assad, mutual accusations intensified, with Americans alleging Russian war crimes and Russians accusing the US of supporting terrorist groups. In 2016, a new element entered the equation: the alleged Russian interference in the American presidential elections that resulted in Donald Trump's victory. The CIA issued a report confirming the influence of Russian agents favoring Trump, although the president-elect rejected such accusations as ridiculous. This historical context is fundamental to understanding the current scenario of cyber warfare between the two powers. As diplomatic relations deteriorated, cyberspace increasingly became a preferred battlefield, allowing hostile actions below the threshold of declared war and with a high degree of plausible deniability. But to fully understand how this became possible, we need to go back in time and analyze how cyberspace evolved from an academic and commercial tool into a strategic military domain. Cyberspace as a battlefield is a relatively recent phenomenon in the history of human conflict. While the internet began as an American military project called ARPANET in the 1960s, its potential as an arena for geopolitical confrontation only began to be fully exploited at the beginning of the 21st century. The first major cyber incidents between nations occurred in the early 2000s, but it was in 2007 that the world witnessed what many consider the first case of large-scale cyber warfare. When the Estonian government decided to relocate a Soviet World War II memorial in Tallinn, the decision provoked fury in Russia. What followed was a series of massive DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks, that paralyzed Estonian government, banking, and media websites for weeks. Although the Kremlin denied involvement, security experts identified patterns suggestive of state coordination. This event was a watershed moment. For the first time, a NATO member country suffered what was essentially a cyber attack attributed to another state. As a result, NATO established its Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Tallinn the following year. In 2010, the world met Stuxnet, a sophisticated malware jointly developed by the U.S. and Israel to sabotage Iran's nuclear program. The malicious code specifically targeted Iranian nuclear centrifuges in Natanz, causing real physical damage through digital means. This was a crucial milestone. It demonstrated that cyber attacks could cause physical destruction to critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, Russian intelligence agencies were refining their cyber warfare capabilities. In 2008, during the conflict in Georgia, coordinated cyber attacks against government infrastructure coincided perfectly with conventional military operations, exemplifying the concept of hybrid warfare. Georgian government websites were taken down exactly when Russian troops were crossing the border, making coordinated communication and response difficult. This pattern of integration between cyber and conventional operations became a trademark of modern Russian military doctrine. Known as the Gerasimov Doctrine, referring to General Valery Gerasimov, who articulated it in 2013, this approach emphasizes the coordinated use of military and non-military means, including cyber operations, information warfare, and economic measures, to achieve strategic objectives. On the American side, documents leaked by Edward Snowden in 2013 revealed the extent of the NSA's, National Security Agency, cyber capabilities, and its global operations. The U.S. had developed sophisticated tools to infiltrate foreign systems, collect mass intelligence, and, when necessary, conduct offensive operations. The PRISM program and other surveillance systems revealed how Washington had transformed the Internet into an unprecedented domain for intelligence collection. But it was the Ukrainian crisis of 2014 that catapulted Russian-American cyber warfare to a new level. When pro-European protesters overthrew Viktor Yanukovych's government in Kiev, the Russian response wasn't limited to the military annexation of Crimea. A comprehensive cyber campaign was launched against Ukraine, serving as a testing ground for new techniques that would later be used against the U.S. and its allies. A particularly disturbing example occurred in December 2015, when Russian hackers associated with the APT-28 group, also known as Fancy Bear, attacked the Ukrainian power grid. The attack left approximately 230,000 Ukrainians without electricity in the middle of winter. It was the first successful cyber attack against a national power grid, demonstrating how critical infrastructure had become vulnerable in the digital era. Ukraine continued to be a testing ground for Russian cyber operations. In June 2017, the NotPetya malware, attributed to Russia, initially hit Ukrainian companies before spreading globally, causing billions of dollars in damage. Although disguised as ransomware, NotPetya was actually a wiper designed purely for data destruction. These attacks against Ukraine reveal an important aspect of modern cyber warfare. Smaller countries often serve as laboratories, where larger powers test their offensive capabilities before employing them against more powerful adversaries. Ukraine, as a U.S. ally and target of Russian aggression, became the epicenter of this phenomenon. But the most dramatic phase of the invisible battle between Russian and American hackers began to unfold during the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. In June of that year, the Democratic National Committee, DNC, announced it had been hacked. Subsequent analyses by the security firm CrowdStrike and American intelligence agencies attributed the invasion to two Russian hacker groups, APT-28, Fancy Bear, linked to Russian military intelligence, GRU, and APT-29, Cozy Bear, associated with the Federal Security Service, FSB. The emails obtained in this hack were later published by WikiLeaks, causing significant embarrassment to the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign. But the Russian operation went far beyond simple hacking. A vast influence campaign was coordinated through social networks by the Internet Research Agency, IRA, a troll factory based in St. Petersburg. Using fake accounts and targeted ads, this operation sought to amplify divisions in American society and influence the election outcome. In January 2017, the American intelligence community published a report concluding that Vladimir Putin had personally ordered a campaign to influence the election in favor of Donald Trump. Although the report did not state that Russian actions altered the election outcome, the incident represented a significant escalation in the use of cyber tools to influence democratic processes. The American response came in the form of sanctions against Russian individuals and entities, expulsion of Russian diplomats, and closure of Russian diplomatic facilities on American soil. Subsequently, investigations revealed that the Russian operation had been even more sophisticated, including attempts to infiltrate state electoral systems and meticulously targeted disinformation campaigns at voters in decisive states. This episode illustrates how cyber warfare evolved beyond purely technical attacks against infrastructure to include influence operations that exploit social and political vulnerabilities. Russia demonstrated how the informational domain could be manipulated to achieve strategic objectives without firing a single shot. In response to Russian actions, the U.S. intensified its own cyber operations. In 2018, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Cybercom, conducted an operation to temporarily disconnect the Internet Research Agency during the American midterm elections, a clear message that electoral interference would have consequences. The Trump administration also expanded U.S. Cybercom's operational authorities through National Security Presidential Memorandum 13, NSPM 13, allowing offensive cyber operations without the need for lengthy interagency approvals. This policy change signaled a more aggressive approach to cyber warfare, seeking to deter adversaries through demonstrations of capability and willingness to retaliate. On February 24, 2022, when Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the cyber component was immediately activated. Even before tanks crossed the border, Russian hackers launched a sophisticated attack against Viasat's Ka-Sat satellite, an American company that provided communications for the Ukrainian military and various European institutions. This attack, using malware called Acid Rain, resulted in significant communication outages and loss of control of critical Ukrainian networks. The timing was no coincidence. The disruption of Ukrainian military communications was carefully synchronized with the advance of conventional Russian forces, exemplifying once again the integration of cyber operations into broader military strategies. In the days and weeks following the invasion, Russia launched waves of cyber attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure. Acid Rain malware and others were used to erase data, wiping in Ukrainian companies and communications infrastructure. Combined cyber and conventional attacks using missiles and drones aimed to disrupt energy, communications, and transportation systems. Power plants, transformers, and fiber optic networks were priority targets. The Ukrainian response was remarkable. Far from remaining passive, Ukraine mobilized its own cyber capabilities, complemented by an IT army of international volunteers. Ukrainian operations targeted Russian banks, internet providers, government websites, and other critical infrastructure. The anonymous hacker group also declared cyber war against Russia, conducting attacks against Russian state media and government websites. This dimension of the conflict represents a significant evolution in cyber warfare. For the first time, we observed a massive global mobilization of hacktivists in support of one side of a conventional conflict. The line between state and non-state operations became even more nebulous, creating new challenges for attribution and responsibility. The United States, although officially not involved in the conflict, provided significant cyber assistance to Ukraine. U.S. Cyber Command teams were sent to help defend Ukrainian networks and conduct threat hunting operations to identify and neutralize Russian malware before it could be activated. This cooperation represents a form of proxy warfare in the cyber domain. Beyond the Ukrainian theater, the U.S. and Russia continued their invisible battle on other fronts. In March 2022, President Biden warned American companies about possible Russian cyber attacks in retaliation for sanctions imposed after the invasion of Ukraine. These concerns were not unfounded. American intelligence agencies detected Russian reconnaissance activities against American critical infrastructure, particularly in the energy sector. A 2022 Microsoft report indicated that Russia, along with China and Iran, was increasingly using artificial intelligence to amplify its cyber attacks against the U.S. These AI-based techniques enabled more sophisticated, adaptive, and difficult-to-detect operations. Russian attacks against NATO member states increased by approximately 25% in 1 year, with the public government sector as the main target. The evolution of Russian-American cyber warfare demonstrates how the fourth domain has become a central element of contemporary geopolitical competition. The conflict is no longer limited to attacks against technical systems. It has evolved to include information warfare, psychological operations, and manipulation of democratic processes. Artificial intelligence emerges as a force multiplier, enabling more sophisticated operations on a larger scale. And that's when everything changed. What happened next redefined the rules of the game and demonstrated how the boundary between the digital and physical worlds had become increasingly thin. In December 2020, the world witnessed what many experts consider the largest cyber attack in history, the SolarWinds operation. Hackers associated with Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, compromised the Orion software from American company SolarWinds, inserting malicious code into legitimate updates. As Orion was widely used by government agencies and large corporations, the infected update was installed on approximately 18,000 systems. What made this attack extraordinary wasn't just its scale, but its sophistication. The hackers remained in the compromised systems for more than 9 months before being detected. During this period, they had access to highly sensitive information in crucial departments of the American government, including Treasury, Commerce, Energy, and even agencies responsible for the nuclear arsenal. The impact was so severe that then President-elect Joe Biden declared that, "Our adversaries should know that as president, I will not stand idly by in the face of cyber attacks." The American response came in April 2021, when the Biden administration imposed comprehensive sanctions against Russia, expelled diplomats, and officially attributed the SolarWinds attack to the SVR. But the retaliation wasn't limited to public measures. Reports indicate that the U.S. conducted secret cyber operations against Russian infrastructure, sending a direct message to the Kremlin about the consequences of its attacks. This cycle of action and reaction exemplifies the dynamics of modern cyber warfare, a constant cat-and-mouse game where the line between espionage and acts of war becomes increasingly thin. The difficulty in attributing attacks with absolute certainty and the absence of clearly defined international norms create an environment of strategic ambiguity that both powers exploit. A particularly concerning aspect of this invisible battle is the growing threat against critical infrastructure. In May 2021, the ransomware attack against Colonial Pipeline demonstrated the vulnerability of the American energy sector. Although executed by the criminal group DarkSide, supposedly based in Russia, the attack was not directly attributed to the Russian government. However, it raised serious questions about Russian tolerance of cyber-criminal groups operating in its territory, as long as they don't attack domestic targets. The incident forced the closure of the largest pipeline on the American East Coast for several days, causing fuel shortages in various states. Colonial Pipeline ended up paying a ransom of $4.4 million in Bitcoin, although the FBI subsequently managed to recover part of this value. President Biden addressed the issue directly with Putin during their summit in Geneva in June 2021, establishing critical infrastructure as a red line that should not be crossed. This episode illustrates how cybercrime has become a complex element in geopolitical competition. States can use criminal groups as proxies, maintaining plausible deniability while pressuring adversaries. The distinction between state actors, state-sponsored criminals, and independent groups has become increasingly blurred, creating additional layers of complexity for attribution and response. The dynamics of Russian-American cyber warfare were also profoundly affected by the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. As we mentioned earlier, the attack on the KA-SAT satellite marked the beginning of hostilities. But what few anticipated was the effectiveness of Ukrainian cyber resistance and the limited role that Russian cyber attacks played in the later stages of the conflict. Before the invasion, experts predicted devastating attacks against Ukrainian critical infrastructure that would paralyze the country. Although there were significant attempts, the scale and impact fell below expectations. Several factors contributed to this. Ukrainian preparation significantly improved since 2014. Substantial Western assistance, and possibly a Russian strategic decision to preserve infrastructure they eventually planned to control. This relative non-event generated important debates about the real effectiveness of cyber warfare in high-intensity conflicts. Some argue that cyber tools are more suitable for operations below the threshold of declared war, losing relevance once conventional hostilities are initiated. Others suggest that Russia simply failed to execute its cyber strategy as planned, facing operational or coordination challenges. A fascinating aspect of Russian-American cyber warfare is its impact on international norms and institutions. Both Moscow and Washington have sought to shape the rules governing behavior in cyberspace, often with fundamentally divergent views. Russia, along with China and other partners, has advocated a cyber sovereignty approach that emphasizes the right of states to control information within their borders. The U.S. and its allies, on the other hand, defend a model of a free and open internet with minimal government interference. This conceptual division reflects fundamentally different views on internet governance, freedom of expression, and national security. As the cyber battle intensifies, these normative differences become increasingly pronounced. The West's response to Russian attacks wasn't limited to in-kind retaliation. In March 2022, the Biden administration announced a pause in U.S. offensive cyber operations against Russia. This surprising decision was made amid concerns that aggressive actions in cyberspace could lead to an unwanted escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. The news, reported by Le Monde, signals the challenges of calibration in a domain where rules of engagement remain fluid. Meanwhile, reports from Microsoft and other security companies indicate that Russia has intensified its disinformation campaigns using artificial intelligence. These operations go beyond simple fake news, employing sophisticated techniques such as data poisoning, contaminating data to bias AI systems, and chatbot manipulation. The boundary between cyber warfare and information warfare becomes increasingly blurred, with attacks targeting not just technological systems, but also the informational and cognitive environment. The development of drones and autonomous systems represents another critical dimension of this invisible battle. The conflict in Ukraine has been described as a laboratory for new war technologies, with relatively inexpensive drones demonstrating the ability to hit strategic targets. Both the U.S. and Russia have invested heavily in integrating cyber capabilities with autonomous systems, creating a dangerous convergence between the virtual and the physical. Russian-American cyber warfare isn't just a confrontation between states. It's a multi-dimensional battle involving government agencies, technology companies, criminal groups, hacktivists, and even ordinary citizens. This distributed nature creates unprecedented challenges for deterrence, attribution, and conflict resolution. The future of this invisible battle will likely be shaped by several factors. First, technological evolution will continue to transform the battlefield. Artificial intelligence, in particular, has the potential to revolutionize both cyber attacks and defenses. Autonomous systems capable of identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities at speeds far superior to human capabilities could create extremely dangerous escalation dynamics. Second, the growing integration of digital systems into all aspects of modern life will continue to expand the available attack surface. As smart cities, autonomous vehicles, and connected medical devices become more prevalent, the risks of attacks with direct physical consequences increase dramatically. Third, the absence of robust international norms will continue to create an environment of strategic uncertainty. Although there are efforts at the United Nations and other forums to develop rules of the game for behavior in cyberspace, progress has been slow and fragmented. This normative gap encourages risky and potentially escalatory behaviors. Finally, the growing integration of cyber operations with other forms of conflict, from economic to conventional military, will continue to blur the lines between different domains. Hybrid warfare, with cyberspace as a central component, will likely become the dominant paradigm for geopolitical competition. For democratic societies, this invisible battle presents fundamental challenges. How to balance national security with privacy and civil liberties. How to protect democratic processes from foreign interference without compromising open discourse. How to develop offensive cyber capabilities necessary for deterrence while promoting international stability. There are no simple answers to these questions. What's clear is that the invisible battle between Russian and American hackers isn't just a technical conflict. It's a competition that touches on fundamental values, governance models, and competing visions of the international order. What have we learned from this analysis? First, that cyberspace has indisputably become the fourth domain of warfare, along with land, sea, and air. Second, that the distinction between peace and war has become dangerously ambiguous in this new domain, creating risks of unintentional escalation. Third, that the integration of cyber capabilities with other forms of national power has created a new form of geopolitical competition for which we are still developing adequate responses. The relevance of this topic for today's world is difficult to exaggerate. The COVID-19 pandemic dramatically accelerated our dependence on digital systems. Remote work, telemedicine, online education, and e-commerce expanded rapidly, creating new vectors of vulnerability. At the same time, geopolitical tensions between great powers have reached levels not seen since the Cold War, increasing incentives for aggressive actions in cyberspace. We are witnessing in real time the evolution of a new form of conflict that challenges traditional notions of sovereignty, territory, and power. The invisible battle between Russian and American hackers is just the most visible manifestation of a fundamental transformation in the nature of international competition. For ordinary citizens, this reality may seem distant and abstract, until it isn't. A successful attack against energy infrastructure could leave entire communities without electricity for days. Interference in water treatment systems could compromise public supply. Disruption of financial systems could prevent access to personal savings. Cyber warfare isn't just a problem for governments and corporations. It's a threat that can directly impact everyday life. The future of warfare is being written now, in invisible battlefields that cross borders, institutions, and domains. And all of us, in some way, are part of this story. If this content made you think differently about modern conflicts and the new dimensions of geopolitical competition, leave your comment below and subscribe for more deep analyses about the wars that shape our world, often without us realizing it.